Welcome to this video where I'll be using Excel to synthesize waveforms by adding different harmonics at different amplitudes. Setting up the harmonics. So this is our XY plane, and this is a graph of sine X, which is the fundamental frequency, then the sine of 2x, which spins twice as fast, sine of 4x, and so on. I've got 9 harmonics, which gives a good representation of different waves when we add them together in different amounts. They're the square wave harmonics and amplitudes using odd harmonics divided by the number of the harmonics. We've got sine 3x over 3. Sawtooth wave harmonics and amplitudes uses all harmonics. And then we move on to the triangle wave synthesis. But be careful of the minus sign. Every other harmonic is negative, and we divide by the square. This is what I have. I've got an amplitude cell. I've got columns for angle in degrees and radians, and I've got all of the 9 harmonics and some columns for putting the data in for the different waves. Cell A6 is somewhere where we can put the type of wave we want. And here I'm just putting angle in degrees, going up in steps of 1. And then I pull down to complete one whole circle or one whole waveform. And then we have to use the radians versions of degrees because Excel does trig functions using radians. So we have to give it radians. So equals the radians of, open brackets, the angle in degrees, and then pull that down. And at the bottom we should see 2 pi, 6.28, so that's good. Now column D is where we're going to put our basic sine wave. So that's the amplitude, so that's equal A3, but you have to press F4 or put $A $3 to get an absolute cell reference, so that it uses that cell every time. So basically we've got the amplitude times the sine of the angle in radians, and you have to use the radians column. Close brackets, press enter. Then pull that down. Anything times 10 to the minus 16 is basically 0. When we click in the D column, you can see because of the absolute reference to A3, it always uses the amplitude cell, regardless of the row it's on at the time. And column E is going to be equal to the amplitude, $A $3, multiply the sine of twice the angle, 2 times the radians angle. And you can type these or you can click the cells, whichever you prefer. This is multiplied by 3 times the angle. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this text in the formula bar. I'm going to paste it into the other columns and then just change the amount that I'm multiplying the angle by to speed it up a bit. You could just paste into the cell rather than pressing the formula bar. So that should be 4. The 5th harmonic is sine of 5x. 6th harmonic is the sine of 6x, and so on. The more harmonics you use, the better the waveforms look like the real thing. So drag across and then pull all the way down to fill them all in. So there's all of our data for the 9 harmonics of a sine wave. They all have the same amplitude though. This is what they'd look like if they were graphed on Excel. It's not very useful to us, and that's what it looks like on Desmos. Synthesizing a square wave. So in cell M3, for a square wave, we need the 1st and the 3rd harmonic times a 3rd, the 5th harmonic times a 5th, and so on. It's going to be equal to D3, which is the first harmonic, plus 1 divided by 3, or a third, times F3, where the third harmonic is, and so on. We could type, for instance, H3 over 5 here, and it would work out the same. Then 1/7 of sine 7x, and finally we'll have also, or plus, 1/9 of means multiplied by, L3. Pull that down. Now when we grab column C and column M, so we've got radians and the square wave, I'll go Insert, click this drop down, Smooth Scatter Graph. There's that square wave with 5 harmonics. Just a quick check for you of what we put in and why. So the if function to choose a square wave. So here in A6, I'm going to put different words for different types of wave. So I'm going to click Data and then Data Validation. I want a list to be in this cell A6, so I click on List and then I put the different words with commas in between them. So square, comma, sawtooth, comma, and triangle, because these are the 3 different waves that I want us to be able to make. Then you click Apply, and that just gives us a drop-down menu with those different words. Nothing happens yet because we haven't included these words in any formulas. So this is where our chosen wave will go, in column N. The if function, you have to put equals if, open brackets, if this is true, comma, do this, otherwise do this, then close the bracket. So if A6 says it's square, then we need to add certain harmonics, otherwise don't do anything. So we put equals, if, open brackets, this thing is true, as in cell A6 says or equals the text string square, close brackets, and then use a comma afterwards to tell it what you want it to do in that case. If it does say square, we want to add the harmonics that we did a moment ago. So D3 plus a third times F3 and so on. That's a 9th times L3, and then a comma, which is where the else part comes. And if we put 2 speech marks, that means don't do anything basically. Put nothing in the cell and close the bracket off and press enter. But we made a mistake already because there's no data being put, and that's because of a common mistake that people often make. Because dragging formulas down causes relative cell references. So this cell looks for A6 to say square, but then other cells in column N look for other cells apart from A6. So we must make what's called an absolute reference. Here it's looking for A7 to say square, and here it's looking for A8 to say square, and there's no words or text in those cells. So we have to make sure when we're looking for something, we tell the formula exactly where the word is. Make it an absolute reference by pressing F4 or pressing $A, $6. Then it'll always look in that cell for the word square, sawtooth or triangle. and press enter, and it should be fixed now. So apply the formula all the way down. Well, this shows it's working, and here it's looking at A6 and row 9. So that absolute reference for A6 is working, and then just continue the formula down. Then we can do a graph of, say, radians, a smooth scatter, and we've got our data there. But if I change the word in A6 to something other than square, then nothing happens. It's only when the text string says square that it does what we wanted it to. That means we can decide which waveforms we want to do, like this Sawtooth waveform coming next. So these are the harmonics for a Sawtooth waveform. As a reminder, every harmonic divided by its order. So instead of having the else after the final comma, instead of getting rid of the null part, the two speech marks, we can do another if. So if it doesn't say square, then if it says something else instead. So we're going to continue, and we're going to say if A6, but make sure it's an absolute cell reference again to A6. If A6 is equal to Sawtooth in speech marks, then, as in comma means then do this, then add all of the Sawtooth harmonics at different amplitudes. So we've got the first plus a half of the second plus 1/3 of the third harmonic plus a quarter of the fourth harmonic, and so on until you get to 1/9 of the ninth harmonic. So plus, finally, 1/9 times L3. Or we could have done L3/9 to divide it by 9. Then we need to finish off that if with a comma and then tell it to do nothing otherwise. And we need two close brackets because we've got two if functions. Don't forget to apply this to the whole column by dragging down. Double click your chart, click the series, and I don't like the marker being very wide. So I drag it up and it's very thick. I drag it down to minimum and it's nice and narrow, so it looks better. Close that off and close that off. Now when we put triangle as the string, nothing happens, but when we do Sawtooth, there's our Sawtooth waveform. And if we say square again, it changes it to square. Now we're going to add the triangle waveform option and formula. Beware of these negative harmonics. Every other one is negative. And we divide by the square of the order. So again, all we're going to do now is edit the formula, get rid of the null operation at the end, the else bit, and we're going to have a third nested if. But we don't need to have another equals. You only have one equals for the whole thing. So if $A $6 is equal to, then in speech marks, triangle. Be careful with the spelling. Make sure your spelling is the same everywhere on the sheet, otherwise it won't recognize what you've written. So if A6 says triangle, then add the triangle harmonics. And something to be aware of, I didn't put an open bracket in my if statement, so this wouldn't work. I'm just doing this as a demo. You always have to have an open bracket following an if. So if it does say triangle, have the first harmonic, take away 1/9 of the third harmonic, then it flips back to plus 1/25 of the fifth harmonic, minus 1/7 squared of the seventh harmonic, plus 1 over 9 squared of the 9th harmonic. And this is all we want to do in this if function. So now we can put an else, a null operator, and a third bracket to close it down because we've got 3 if statements. And as I thought earlier, this won't work and you might be scratching your head, but it's only because following my final if, I did not put an open bracket. So just change that, press enter, and then it's happy days. Don't forget to apply again the formula to all of your cells in that column. So we've got square, sawtooth, and fingers crossed, triangle. There we go, pretty good. You can change the amplitude because we've already made the harmonics depend on what the amplitude says. And it'll update the values and the graph in real time if you like. Change the amplitude to anything like 20 and the graph that adjusts and the data adjusts. So that's pretty cool. But what I want to do, drag the end of the data and pull it down so I've got 2 waveforms down to like 720 degrees or 4 pi's worth. So I don't need that last row. Sometimes graphs will grab the additional data and sometimes they won't. So if in doubt, like here it's grabbed 2 cycles worth, but it doesn't always do it. So if in doubt, just draw yourself a new graph. Synthesizing a square wave with n harmonics. So we're going to be able to, as a demonstrator, create a square wave with various amounts of harmonics. I've added a column, I've had a tidy up, and I've added a cell, A11, for the number of harmonics that I want in my wave. So you probably guessed, I need to press data, then data validation, make it a list, and you can put any numbers, but I'm going to go between 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 harmonics, because that's all I can do with the amount of columns I have, because square waves use odd harmonics. I'm going to colour these in so they look pretty, and then I selected 1, which doesn't matter for now. So here I've got an if statement equals if, open bracket, if $A$11, my harmonics indicator is equal to the text string of 1, then do this. So if A11 says 1, then put the data for 1 harmonic. Otherwise, if A11 says 2, put the data for 2 harmonics, down to if A11 says 5, put the data for 5 added harmonics together. Otherwise, don't do anything, and then close off the formula with 5 closed brackets because we'll have 5 open brackets. So this is what we're doing if there is just 1 harmonic needed. So that's just the fundamental. Otherwise, if A11 says we want 2 harmonics, comma, then put the data in for the first harmonic and the third divided by 3. The same stuff that we've done earlier for square waves. So here if it's A11 says 3, then we need to tell it to use the data for 3 harmonics. I've sped this up because we've done this already a couple of times. If A11 says 4, put the data in for 4 added harmonics, comma at the end. And another if A11 says 5 as a text string, then put the data in for 5 harmonics. Otherwise, as in else, don't do anything, put nothing in the cell and close it off with 5 closed brackets because we have 5 open ones. And then we might encounter a tiny little problem. Where's the data? There's no data. even when I change this, no data appears in cell M3. But this is a formatting problem. Our formula is looking for text strings, but Excel has assumed that our number is an actual number. So this is cell format or that type of issue, easily fixable. So right click cell A11 and then we'll do number format. And basically Excel thinks it's a number rather than a string of text. If I change it to tell Excel that this number 1 is actually a string of text, then it fixes the issue completely. So I can do that, or I can fix it in a different way. Now when I invoke this, some data appears because M3 is looking for a text string. And now I've forced A11 to be a text string. But if you did want to keep it as a number rather than text, A11 is a number, all you need to do is change your formula and get rid of any speech marks. So just to clarify, if you put speech marks in your formula for a cell, you have to make sure that there is a text string in the cell. And Excel thinks that a number is a number. Excel doesn't think that a number is text. So I've reformatted the A11 as a number, so I need to get rid of any reference to text strings. But these are the things that we live and learn the more we do it. Now when I invoke A11 again, just check that it is formatted as a number, and now we're getting results in cell M3, so happy days. Now drag down, and these numbers in column M will change depending on what number is in cell A11. So let's do the square wave against degrees, say, with a smooth scatter. Make it nice and thin. And this is a square wave with 1 harmonic, as in a sine wave. This is a square wave with 2 harmonics, with 3 harmonics, and with 4 harmonics. And this is a square wave with 5 harmonics, which is my favourite. So I really hope this has been useful for you and a bit of fun. Don't be scared of the if function, just get in there. So yeah, please like and subscribe, put comments in and ask any questions and have a go yourselves. All the best.